So we're now in the process of fitting the beams in the boat. The boat has 3 athwartship beams, and that is all the framing in the boat, all the internal framing. And anybody from Europe, North America, Oceania is going to find that pretty surprising in boat building, because traditions outside of Asia use much more framing, internal framing in a boat, either bent frames that span the hull or floor timbers and sawn frames and the like. But we fit these in a particular way that's I think interesting and worth showing. But Emi Shinmura has been here this week volunteering with the project. I'm glad she came, and she cut and fit this particular beam, which we're ready to install in the boat. So just a simple through mortise. This beam is not shouldered, and I have seen that most of the time in Japanese boat building, that the beams don't get shouldered. They get sent through, in my previous apprenticeships, they would get sent all the way through lengthwise from one side of the boat to the other. We're going to do a kind of a neat trick that saves you that. And then the beams would have kerfs in them, and they would get wedged. So that's, you know, anybody who's done timber framing is probably familiar, and some furniture work is probably familiar with a wedged through tenon, which would be the typical joinery. These boats are neither, the beams are neither shouldered, nor the original boat is not wedged. I suspect that's because fiberglass got introduced into this boat building tradition, and a fiberglass patch goes over the outside of the beam, and they wrap fiberglass and essentially create a fiberglass shoulder inside. So my guess is they, when they started to use fiberglass and depend on it, they abandoned wedging the tenons. If the camera can come closer, just a tiny detail, if you can focus right on the straight edges in there, what Emi did was she chiseled to the line inside and out and kind of hollowed it out in the middle. It's a technique that works faster. You still get the clean line that's visible, the clean fit, but you've created much less wood to remove on the inside and outside face, so it's easier to do the fitting process. And the teacher, my second teacher, taught me that, and kind of interesting, he called it usotsuku, which means to lie. So we're doing a little bit of lying here. All right, so we will now put this beam in. You want to hold that, and can I have that, please? And so to get this beam in, we cut this piece out of it. And that allows us to, Emi can move forward, and she's going to hold that at the height of the mortise. I now have the narrower beam, and so I can come in at an angle, and she can swing across as we come through. Watch the other side. And she gets it lined up, and now to her, I'm pushing, you're pulling, and it's coming through. And you say when you want me to tap it? Okay. It's through, and it's got to come through 2 bu, so 1/4 inch. Let's get it. Okay, so her beam's through, and now we come back to this side. Get a shot maybe from above here. Not all the way through? Okay, so get all the way through. We'll live with that. And now I've got to come back that way. And now this, and we're gonna, off camera, we're gonna put some glue in this and this joint, and then that comes right back together. And that's the finished thing. The kerf of the saw creates this little offset here. and we'll just plane that off later. So, and any little gaps we have, which we have none here, maybe a little gap on the inside if Emmy wants to just make a really thin little wedge and put it in there, then we all feel better about ourselves. So that is, that's kind of classic beam installation in Japanese boats. And I'll point out too that traditional Japanese ships, the large ships, were essentially built, it's remarkable to me, essentially built like big small boats. Again, no real transverse framing, just a series of beams at different heights dropping down through the hull. There have been 4 replica ships built here in Japan, Edo era ships. And yeah, it's really extraordinary that they're the same kind of arrangement and technology and engineering as these boats. So, I got nothing to say.